Okay, so this is the start and well into the evocative environment. Now I start off with the sienna, the burnt sienna colored pencil. And here I'm on Reeves BFK paper, which is a really heavy duty, nice paper. So the first thing that I do is just gesture everything out, starting with the landscape. My landscape is a combination of 3 photographs of the desert and some archaeological ruins, and then a photograph of myself tearing my shirt. This image is based on a Bible, a book of the Bible called the Book of Job, which is about a man who's tested to see if his faith is strong. One of the metaphors in the story is when he tears his shirt off in anguish over the loss of his property, his animals, and worst of all, his family. So that's kind of the image that I'm going for here. And you can see I'm being really light with my marks. I'm not doing a lot of heavy pressure stuff, just the primary contours indicating where the forms are going to be in their scale and location. I'm doing an asymmetrical composition. So I'm going to be large and in the left-hand side in a kind of square format. And then the right-hand side is going to be the architectural forms that are smaller, more numerous, balancing against my large form. So you can see I kept things really, really tentative here. It's all very just concentrated on structure and composition at this point. And you can see I'm starting to get into some of the secondary details. Still using the burnt sienna. You're going to use the burnt sienna for the entire first part of this project. It's similar to the Conti project in that we're just using this as kind of a grayscale approach. So all we're doing is locating forms and value. So we have a kind of tonal value map underneath our subsequent layers of color. I keep it loose though. I don't go for a lot of tiny details. It's mostly just about a map of where the values are. You can see that I'm concentrating on the face now. The direction of light is coming from the left, which I've tried to coordinate with the buildings. As you can see, the buildings have the light coming from the left, and my face has the light coming from the left. It makes sense. That's why I asked you to photograph yourself or find a photograph that matched the tonal direction of light in your image. I am getting into a little bit of detail, but I'm not overdoing it. I'm keeping it very loose. Smoke I invented in my own head, thinking about the destruction in a storm. I'm working the whole page though. I'm getting into a little bit more smaller movements. You can see I've got my pencil nice and sharp. I'm running out of my sienna at this point. Adding a couple more details in the foreground. You can see that my face is really nicely worked up. I'm probably stepping back and looking at that point. Where do I need more attention? How do I pull the eye downward to this lower right-hand corner? There's a lot of weight in the upper right-hand corner, so I'm trying to pull our eye down. So there's a kind of triangular relationship between my face, the upper building, and the lower building. You can see that I really am working the whole page, creating a tonal map. This underpainting is very similar to what the Venetian school did during the Renaissance. They would paint an underpainting in Venetian red, and then they would layer color on top in the form of glazes. So that's kind of what we're thinking about in this project. It's a little similar to what we did in the black and white mini hats project, except for instead of white and black, it's a grayscale formed out of brown and white. So it's kind of like a fusion between the mini hats project and the foreshortening project, the Conti project. All right, we're coming to the end of part 1. So you can see we worked the entire page just in burnt sienna. Is there more details? Yes, of course. There's more of everything to come. But I have a good start here. If I pushed it much further, it could be a finished drawing. Now in part 2, you start layering color on top. So I'm starting off with this orange and yellow over the sky and landscape. I want it to be kind of a fiery horizon. And I'm using just thin, very thin layers of this yellow over the top of the brown. I don't want to lose the brown. I'm also using some white to blend the yellow and transition it into the brown so that it's smoother, kind of like we did in mini hats. And as we did in mini hats, I'm laying over pure color into the face, red and yellow and orange, so that I get some of the reflection from the landscape. Now I'm using some of the dark brown and black to focus my features and some of the areas in the landscape. There you see I went over it with a white crayon to get the skin tone, just like we did in mini hats. When I say crayon, I mean colored pencil. Now I'm using the dark brown to outline the features, give some emphasis, give some more shadow, more detail. More dimension, back and forth between the white and the brown, the yellow, the orange. Now I'm laying in some black, and you can see how that really focuses the face. Also done some more work on the hands. The face feels pretty close to complete, although it's got more work to do. But it's time to take a break from it and time to move on, maybe into the clothing and more of the landscape. So here again you can see me detailing this front building, putting some tertiary marks, standing for bricks on top of it, using the dark brown and some yellow. There's really no order. You can go back and forth. Dark on top of light, light on top of dark, and so on. That's how you get that kind of interlocking of the various layers. Now I'm putting down some of this ochre yellow, which is kind of a brownish yellow. If I didn't have it, I would just simply mix the yellow with a little bit of the purple. And that would tone the yellow down. Probably put a light layer of purple down with a heavier layer of yellow on top. Again, step back every once in a while to look at your image. See what's working, what's not working. More detail with my dark brown. more shadowing. Really trying to concentrate and give some visual weight down to that lower part. I'm going to get into the rest of the body here. And then back to the landscape. A little bit of this yellowy green just gives some nice temperature variation. And some white over the top to blend. Now I'm starting to put the skin tone in the hands and the chest, using the dark brown to have contour, to create shadow. Some blue in the shirt to create shadow and to create a complement to the orange. It's not that I want the shirt to be blue, I just want the shadows to be blue. Shadows of a white shirt to be blue, and that's because of the predominant orange, yellow-orange landscape. So I'm really setting up a kind of complementary palette in a way. But it's toned down because of the brown. Again, the white is for blending and smoothing as well as lightening. The white's also used for creating white. Just like the black paper, sometimes you need to erase in order to get back to the page so that you can have the layer that you need clean so that what you're putting on top will actually show up. I know I'm standing in the way here, but I'm writing a quote from Job over the top of the image. Naked I came from my mother's womb. And I'm just going to kind of have it floating over the landscape. I don't want it to be too obvious, so I'm shading over it. That's the beauty of colored pencil. It's kind of a transparent medium. And obviously, your work's going to go in a different direction than my work because you have different concerns. But I'm just trying to show you in these first two parts the process. And it's the same. We're thinking about line and shape. We're thinking about placement and composition. We're thinking about scale and proportion. We're thinking about light and shadow, space, texture, primary, secondary, and tertiary details. We're thinking about reflectivity of light. We're thinking about focal points. We're thinking about working the whole as part of the process, stepping back and looking. We're thinking about contour line, implied edge versus actual edge, soft edge versus hard edge. So all of the same ideas that we've been using for this entire class come into play in an image like this. Think about thinking about everything that we've thought about over the course of this semester as you draw. Question yourself. Have you thought about everything? Are you working the whole? Are you stepping back and looking? See you next class.